here's the truth. If you double the understanding of your customer, you will double your revenue. Mm-hmm. It's a very simple process of understanding that most people don't take enough time to understand their avatar or the customer they're really servicing. Mm-hmm. They are just servicing the idea and concept of making money. And therefore, they're not actually thinking about the person who's buying the product. All they're thinking about is shoving that in front of the person and buy my crap. Literally is kind of, and you got to take a different mindset approach to this because that honestly doesn't work. You get lucky on that end of the spectrum, but if you want to build a real business with money and profit, it has to be process driven. It has to be organized. It can't just be luck crap throwing products and then hopefully hitting something that sticks against the wall. Okay, and that's a lot of drop shipping mindsets. I want to make sure it needs to be processed to that, not just like toss a bunch of crap at the wall and see what sticks, right? If it sticks, it's probably nasty.
Hi everybody. In today's episode we had with us Neil Twa. Neil, together with his partner of 8 years, helped his clients and himself to sell more than $100 million via private label sales on Amazon FBA. In today's episode we talked a lot about the life cycle of an e-commerce product, common mistakes store owners do, why every store owner should build his e-commerce store with the exit in mind, how to operate in a data-driven way, and much more. This episode was exceptionally funny, and besides a lot of value that Neil shared, he's also a very funny guy, so I'm sure you'll enjoy this episode. Just one note, at the beginning of the episode we had some connectivity issues, but this was sorted pretty fast, so just please ignore the connectivity issues. It shouldn't interfere that much. That's it, guys. I hope you enjoy.
Welcome to the eCom X Factor podcast, where it's all about launching and scaling your business using sales funnels, automations, and smart marketing. And now, please welcome your host, the founder of eCom X Factor, Yaron Bin.
Hi Neil, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, sir?
I'm actually very good, and we had a small talk before we went live, and it was fun and funny. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yes, you were fun and funny. I'm dry and boring, so let's see if we can make it work.
No, you were fun and funny.
We'll do our best.
Cool, awesome. So before we get started, because we have plenty of things to talk about, stuff that also interests me on like a personal level, because I'm considering shifting to Amazon and developing our brand. So can you please share a bit about your background story, which sounds very rich?
Man, absolutely. I'll cover a little bit about what we talked, and then I'll leave the stuff that maybe my mom would be interested. I'll leave that to the side. So background in technology and business, started programming when I was like 14, 15, got into college and rode the wave for a little bit. I actually went on a full ride music scholarship to college, played classical jazz and trumpet. And so I got that scholarship, thought I was going to be a musician, got about to my third year, realized I had more of an aptitude for business and computers and science and stuff, and didn't want to end up living in a van down by the river, as a defunct musician. So I switched over to that computer science and stuff. When I realized that the e-com aspect, and this is going to date me just a little bit, I think, 94, 95, it was Windows 3.1, and then we were moving into Windows 97. And it's like, I want to learn about e-com and business and internet. And, nobody could teach me that, right? So I had to jump out to the corporate world, started consulting gigs, ended up in Sprint when it was PCS, just going into the mobile division. I was like the 5,000th employee that got hired over there to.
And at this point we had some connectivity issues, so I really apologize about this.
That's okay, we're back.
Okay. Hopefully.
And we're back. All right, so anyways, that was just a sign that I needed to shorten my story down. It's like, hey, stop recording. So anyways, I got into Sprint. That was fun. Worked my way up and started taking over more of the management aspect and taking websites into digital database driven systems. And we got into knowledge management, which was big because Facebook, was coming online big. Sprint was moving in the mobile world. People were like, we want more dynamic stuff. After my fifth year there, we were at 80,000 employees. I was the 5,000th employee. I mean, it grew just super fast, right? IBM picked me up from a project. The partners hired me away from Sprint. I spent almost 5 years in IBM at that point doing knowledge management, building businesses within businesses inside of IBM's technology division and stuff, which was a lot of fun. And I learned a lot from a lot of super smart people. And we learned about, more about the human machine interaction, language, artificial and stuff like that. So I got a real good, taste of the ground up aspect of what is considered search engines today, right? Latent, semantic, growing, knowledge, learning. It's kind of the things we take for granted now. That was really big back then, right? So I got into consulting and stuff, left in 2007, started my own management consulting company, made IBM a client, a bunch of others, and got to have fun working on the 2010 census project and other stuff. And then I got really impassioned by affiliate marketing. So I really drove into the traffic space. And I was uploading spreadsheets into systems and just taking Hail Mary passes because there was no web interfaces, no Facebook ads, none of that stuff. Google ads were just starting to really mature. So we would just load campaigns into spreadsheets with images and stuff and just Hail Mary it out there and see what happens, right? And we were doing that across mobile networks. And I started to do some physical product affiliate marketing, and these guys were, really crushing it. In about 2009, 2010, I got really good at that. And I made a couple of, mobile advertising companies. They got a lot of seed funding off the back of my efforts. And I thought, what, I'm building somebody else's business again. I got to knock that off. So I got into physical products more, and then realized in 2012, from a buddy of mine, I didn't even realize you could sell on Amazon, right? I was like, well, look at that. That's very cool. But there was a whole engine of knowledge there. They had a e-com engine they were building. It's referred to as the A9 engine. I think they're at A10 now, if I remember correctly. And I was like, dang, that's traffic built in. It's product-driven traffic. I'm going to learn this system because I was like, this is a knowledge system. It's a learning system. I can figure this out. So I spent the better part of 2 years reverse engineering them and figuring out what it wanted, when it wanted it, how it wanted it. And then I just started to figure out how I could get it to talk with my products, with my listing, with the system, because it was all numerical based. Like we think product driven is a real true emotional. It's actually buyer driven on the emotional side. It's very data driven on the seller side. And so we just figured that out. And then we just started launching products like as fast as we could throw stuff. We were getting borrowing capital from everywhere, and we were just throwing stuff in there. And then we would get it ranking to the top and then ranking to the top. And, we had a blast. We started coaching some people around 2015. Who were wanting to know what we were doing. And we started making some successful sellers there, got some people to be very successful. My first 8-figure case study was in 2016. I had a gentleman come through our coaching program, and he ramped it to $5 million a month in 9 months. Wow. So he really took that system and pushed it to the max. So that's when I really knew we had something, intrinsic to our business, intellectual property. We really had a process that worked great. And we just kept repeating it and then refining the management and business side. And so since 2012, I've been focused on Amazon FBA and brand building specifically, and keeping, in line with that process and refining. I took forays into dropshipping. I have had a Shopify store. I ran it to 100,000 a month. And as I was mentioning during our call, I was involved with the guys at Dropify for a while over there. Jason Lowell, great guys, good business. Definitely love their software. We had sort of a different path. I was more of the, FBA, Amazon stuff, and they were heading, towards the dropping. We just kind of mutually parted ways, and that was great. Still love those guys, but they do a lot of work over there. So I'm very familiar with the whole e-com model and all of its aspects, from the drop shipping and AliExpress. And can I only get products from Alibaba, or, right? We do a lot of our own manufacturing now. We've got 200 sourcing agents across the world. We run a pretty good size operation. We have a software that was developed in 2014. It's now a 6-year-old software. It's pretty mature in the e-com space, called Six Leaf. And so that's some of the stuff we'll probably talk about as we go along. But there you go. That's the boring long details of a simple question, right?
Also, no, it sounds like a fascinating story. And I want to take you back for a minute to the transitioning between when you have had the job and what made you decide to quit the job. Because I know many people are struggling. They have a 9-to-5 job and they're starting to build like an Amazon store or a Shopify store. But
when do I know?
When do you? There's obviously no right answer. But how did the transition look like on your end?
Yeah, how did it look like my end? Well, I had a lot of transition in that period, right? As 2007 rolled in, I had kind of gotten an inkling that my division in IBM was going to move to Argentina, but I would be able to get new position in IBM somewhere else. That wasn't really the problem. So I had kind of a decision, and there's some of that people have talked to me about in the past who are working like, I know I had this kind of like why thing. I kind of could go left, I could go right, and I couldn't kind of figure out what to do. I would not advise what I did. I'll tell you what you should kind of do. or at least in my opinion. And I'll tell you what I did and why maybe not to do that. When they gave me that opportunity to leave or take another position in the company somewhere else, I chose to leave. But I had a severance package and I thought, okay, I'll get this started or whatever. Well, life just came at me really fast, man. That's what happens, right? I got married in March. I left my position in June. We found out in September we were pregnant with our first child. And then because of the complications of my wife's pregnancy, she was an RN. She was working in a hospital and she had to go on bed rest and couldn't work anymore. So in the span of 1 year, I went from having, $200,000 in income to no income, a baby on the way, and a brand new business with no revenue.
Sounds fun.
So I don't recommend you try that in your first year of marriage. We're still married, very happy. And it was a very tough year though, and made it a little more tough in the second year. But anyways, I don't recommend you do that per se. But again, I'm very glad that I did. I take that risk. I'm very glad that I went ahead after that. I think if you're if I was waiting for the perfect time to do it, I would have never done it at the end of the day. I never would have done it. I just would have taken another position in IBM and kept going that direction. And at that point, I was using airplanes like buses. It was like, to me, it got to the point like I was riding one of those India buses with all the people hanging off and the goats and the cars. And I just got so bad. It was like hitching a bus ride every week. And it was like terrible, right? So I was happy to get off the airplanes as soon as I could get off. I was traveling like 300 days a year. And I knew that wasn't stop. Right. It wasn't going to stop. And I had a new wife and a baby on the way. And I'm like, I wanted to be a part of that. I didn't want to be gone every week. So in that way, I'm glad I took that risk and made the choice for my family. And that, in the end, that's worked out. Now, here's what I might answer the other way, if you don't mind me answering it this way.
Sure, for sure.
I recommend people now who get involved with any of my business or coaching, consulting or whatever, that they at least get their business up and running and have 3 months of consistent profits in their business that just about or close to seeing to the point where it would replace their income. Yeah. And by the month 3, if they're feeling good and things are going great and the profit is still there, then by month 4, they could leave, right? You've got some consistent time. I'd say 3 months in e-commerce, pretty good. Month 1, a little more risk. Month 2, you're still figuring things out. Month 3, traffic, advertising, etc., or kind of maybe SEO is kicking in. You're starting to get some things moving on influencing. You're getting a little more stability in it. And then, month 3 and 4, decide to make that transition, right? Yeah. That's what I recommend for my folks now who are net new, who are brand new and just getting started and wanting to move out. Give yourself a little bit of a cushion, right? Always overestimate your war chest. Like if you think, I only need 10 grand, try making it 20 and then shooting for the 10. Yeah. Right. Give yourself it actually reminds me of a story like this. There was this guy sitting on the bench in New York, right? And he's like all upset and he's his executive and he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm running out of money. Can't make my payroll. Can't get anything going. Right. And this old dude walks up to him and sits down on the bench. And the guy looks over to him and he says, I see you're having some troubles. And the guy was like, yeah, I'm having all these problems or whatever. And he's like, well, you know what? I'm going to help you out with this. And he reaches in, gets his checkbook, writes down a check or whatever, hands it to the guy and said, I hope this helps you. And then he walks away. Well, the guy looks, he's like stunned. This man is handing me a check and he opens the check and he looks at it and it says $100,000 and it's signed by Andrew Carnegie. Okay. So he's like, oh my gosh, right? So he goes and he takes this check and he thinks to himself, okay, what am I going to spend this on? Then he decides, you know what? I better not spend this right now. What I want to do is I'm just going to put this in the bank and I'm going to forget about it. So what happens is he goes about and changes his mindset. He starts to do deals differently. He starts to sell more. And within less than a year, he's turned his business back around. Okay. So he got all of that fixed, but he still had the money. So he goes back to the bench one day and he's sitting there and he's waiting to find this old man. And it just so happens the old guy shows up again, right? He sits down at the bench and he says, look, I've got this check for you. I want you to have this back. I didn't need it. I just realized I could do a lot of my own. And it gave me a huge amount of confidence just knowing that I had that setting over there, even though I didn't want to use it and it was still there. Well, before the old man could even say anything, up walks this nurse and runs over and grabs him and says, oh, I'm so sorry, sir, that this man was bothering you. He thinks he's Andrew Carnegie from the home, and I need to take him back to where he was. The executive sat on the bench is dumbfounded. He's like, what just happened, right? So the check would have never worked. But it was the confidence in knowing he had that setting there that was most important. So what you should take from that is double whatever you think you need, put it aside, let it have some confidence in your brain that it's there in case you need it, but plan to work through the activities and actually get it done to the point where you can be successful. And maybe you won't even use that money, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's very important, and it's also very subjective. Every person has like different risk aversions, and what is like financial status, and does he have family? Doesn't he have family? What are the traffic channels he is using? It's very subjective and varies a lot. So
it is. And that's one of the reasons why I chose, as I came from a paid traffic background, and why I chose Amazon in 2012 as opposed to continuing with that, even though I had a very good skill set in it. Is it was a lot of work to run out of traffic channel at the end of the day and really keep it going, keep your counts up, make sure it's working, go through the creatives because they all have a life cycle to some degree. They don't just work in, an infinite time frame. You have to kind of keep working through them, right? And with Amazon, it was a constant traffic channel. It was at that point, it was like a 3-lane highway running 24/7, 365 with traffic. I just had to get my products in front of that traffic. I had to get my hot dog stand up against the road, and I had to put it like 3 feet in front of the other guy's hot dog stand. And if I could do that, I would suck up all his hot dog traffic, right? He'd be selling hot dogs, but I'd be selling hot dogs with cookies, right? And so they were like, "Ooh, hot dogs with cookies." So they buy my product and take it. Well, now it's a 7-lane highway, right? And getting your hot dog stand means you got to crowd through just a little bit of other hot dog stands, but make no mistake, there's still 7 lanes of traffic running of people who want to buy in 30 seconds or less, literally almost everything and I love it even more now, quite frankly, than I did then, mainly because with competition comes opportunities for saturation, and then there's opportunities for holes to be filled that just others are not really taking advantage of.
Agree. So let's talk about hot dogs with cookies for a second.
Hot dogs with cookies.
So you mentioned before the distinction between the fact that buying is emotional process, but choosing a product is a data-driven process. And a lot of people are finding it very challenging or failing to choose the correct product. So what are your do's and don't do's for choosing a product? What niches, what are you looking for when you choose a product? A hot dog with a cookie. Which cookies do you place on the hot dog?
Right. Is it the chocolate chip cookie or the oatmeal raisin? Like you got to kind of decide what the market, you got to figure it out. Our process has been refined by thousands of product launches, right? The software I mentioned, 6leaf, we've launched over 60,000 products with sellers. Okay. We've got every category, every data-driven metric you can possibly think of. We've watched it go 6, 7, and 8-figure on launches. So we got a really good handle on what it takes to get products into market position. So what it takes to find a product to put into that launch position and the product research side. Let's go through that for a sec. I was on a consulting call one day, one of my first client calls that I took after we had gotten success in our business. And literally we were down to just a few hours a week of working. And so people were bugging us for coaching. So we started taking on some coaching clients, right? And I remember this one call, the guy gets on, very first call, and he listens to what I say and he's going through the process. And I remember he stops me and he just says, "Okay, but what the hell am I going to sell?" And that's kind of stuck with us. They're like, "What the blank am I going to sell?" And that stuck with us in this entire year. In fact, it's part of one of our first coaching modules is to deal with what the blank to sell, right? And so many people drive it by emotions in terms of it. And that's okay when you're thinking about it from the buyer perspective, because here's the truth. If you double the understanding of your customer, you will double your revenue. It's a very simple process of understanding that most people don't take enough time to understand their avatar or the customer they're really servicing. They are just servicing the idea and concept of making money. And therefore, they're not actually thinking about the person who's buying the product. All they're thinking about is shoving that in front of the person and buy my crap. Literally is kind of, and you got to take a different mindset approach to this because that honestly doesn't work. You get lucky on that end of the spectrum. But if you want to build a real business with money and profit, it has to be process driven. It has to be organized. It can't just be luck crap throwing products and then hopefully hitting something that sticks against the wall. Okay. And that's a lot of drop shipping mindsets. I want to make sure it needs to be processed to that, not just like toss a bunch of crap at the wall and see what sticks, right? If it sticks, it's probably nasty if it sticks to the wall. There's a reason for that. I agree. My dad used to tell about. How do you know you had a good date? Well, you come home and you throw your underwear against the wall, and if it sticks, you've had a great date. And I'm like, Dad, come on, you cannot tell people that. That's disgusting. All right. So at the end of the day, what the hell do I sell? It really is emotional driven from the buyers. If you understand the buyers, you understand their products. If you do enough research about what it is they're passionate about and what they really love, you may not be passionate about it, and that's not really what matters. And that's where people get into the emotional seller-driven mindset of what am I going to sell on an emotional level. And it really gets down to what are those people going to buy? on an emotional level. And if they're, fuzzy bunny slippers to grandma, I'll sell it. I don't care. I don't need to know about it. I'm not an avatar. I just need to know that, grandmas want the pink funny fuzzy slippers and not the purple ones, right? That they like the ones with a little cushioning in them for their arch support, and they don't care that it's just flat and plastic.
Yeah.
But what I'll see is people come to me with products and they're like, well, I'm selling the pink ones and they're flat, cheap Chinese plastic. And I'm like, well, no one's going to buy that. Like, why do you think that? Well, because, it's going to make all this money. No. So when you actually determine there's some sort of product or person that's going to meet the demand of that product, and it's going to fill their needs, right? Not yours, right? We should be driven to our customer first. Then you're going to look into the market and you're going to go through analytical process. We call it by the numbers. Okay. If you go by the numbers, the product needs to reach a certain level of profit to your bank account. And it's very important because the rest of the revenue nonsense doesn't really matter. Like I can tell you, I've had guys come to me and they're like, yeah, we're doing 3 million, a year. And I'm like, that's great, man. That's fantastic. Tell me about your cost of goods. Tell me about your products. Tell me about your brand. When we get through it and they finally open up, they're spending $2,999,000 to make that work. I'm like, what is that? Right. and so at the end of the day, you should be taking home a minimum of what's called 20% triple net. Your net EBITDA, or your earnings before income tax and depreciation, should be 20%, 18 on the low end, upwards of, you can get as high as 25 to 30% in e-com. That's bottom line numbers. Okay. If you're not achieving that in the products that you're selling, then more products aren't going to solve that problem.
Sure.
It's going to be more problem. Because I get people who come in and it's like, well, I only have $7 in profit per unit. Okay. That's not great. I would prefer you have more than 10. Okay. But I'll just sell 1,000 units a month. No, you're actually just compounding the problem. Because now you're moving more product. It's more customer support, more logistics, more people and overhead. You're not just moving more units. Your economies of scale has just become more complex. Right. So you can't sell 100 units at $7 a month if you haven't even acquired the customer yet, and then expect you're going to somehow magically overcome those numbers when you reach 1,000 units a month. So this is a wrong mindset. So when you get into the numbers and buy the numbers, you actually have to determine profitability. So here's how we do it. We make sure that the gross margin is 35%, not below 35% on the gross margin of the product. And forgive me, guys, if you don't know gross margin or EBITDA or these, go to Google.
For sure.
It's also important you understand that in the business to run these, because this is a product-driven business. And in the numbers, you're going to need to understand gross net, gross margin, profit margins, and the differences between them, okay? Because some people will be like, I'm getting a 300% profit margin. It's like, no, you're not, actually. Your calculations are a little off. But we recommend for Amazon, you don't go below $10 in profit. I most often see like the 80-20 rule in all things. A lot of people come to me with sub $10 in profit before they've even used pay-per-click advertising on Amazon to acquire that customer. And at that point, across the board now, it's around $5 to $7 per CPA, cost per acquisition for a customer with Amazon's PPC. I'm not talking about Facebook and Google and all this stuff, because Amazon has its own little PPC platform built into it, right? Google engineers actually built a good component of it. So it's really like a lot like AdWords, keyword driven, search driven, et cetera. So if you really understand AdWords and you apply it, quite a bit of it to Amazon's PPC, you'll kind of understand the concept. Very big keyword driven metric. Right. So if you can't acquire a customer for $5 to $7 and you try to go acquire them with your profit, what ends up happening is most of the time I see people coming in with sub $1 profit per unit, which is not great, right? Because now they haven't paid for taxes, operations, and other things. And when they hit that, they're going to be negative, right? And they're running at a loss. So I recommend more than $10 to $12 per unit minimum. So we are typically working at the retail end. What does that look like? You're usually at $30, $50 minimum in retail, or up to $300 in retail.
Okay.
So we play more of a bit of an affinity. Now we started out in the sub $20 retail products long ago. We found very quickly by 2014 and 15 that those products were not sustainable. They had a shorter lifespan. They weren't as profitable, and it took us just as much effort to move a unit of that product as it took to move a unit of a $50 plus product. Now you're thinking in your mind, somehow the numbers get bigger. the customer base gets harder to sell. And it's actually the reverse. If you can inverse your mindset there for a second, those who buy at $50 to $100 are brand driven. And it isn't the price that's driving them per se. It is the evaluation of the product. It's their attachment to it emotionally. It's what they feel it's going to do for them, right? They're going to share the latest iPhone with their friends. They're going to take better pictures with it. They're going to jump higher with their shoes. They're going to run longer with their supplements, right? They have this emotional driven appeal, right? Yeah. And we really play at the brand affinity level. So brand registration, brand trademarks are a big component of what we do for intellectual property reasons at the time we're selling, as well as when we sell the business later on, which is a component of what we do as well. So we go by the numbers and we determine that. We determine the market research, and the other last component of that product research phase, if you will, is determine obviously emotion-driven buyer value. We talked about that for a second ago. Really looking at what people want, not what you want. Okay. Just look at yourself if you want to get an idea. If you buy more than one thing of one brand, then you're an emotional driven brand buyer. Why are you buying that? Is there another person like you that's buying it? That's a great place to start, right? Then we go by the numbers to determine that it is profitable. It has to have a good profitability index. We call it a profit matrix, a green light spreadsheet we have literally that's got like 42 columns. And when you plug all that data in and it goes green, you should sell it. Literally. And our assistants can go through that now and they get green lit, and it basically tells us how much we should spend on that product. And then we just approve the product launch and they go do it. Right. You should have a process of going through the numbers to ensure profitability. And then we don't want to marry our products. This is a big one, like getting in love with your product. It comes a little bit back to the 100 to 1,000 metrics I was just talking about, right? If I'm married to my product at 100 units and I think somehow that I can get it to 1,000 units, ultimately that's not going to work. People will get stuck 2, 3, 4 months in a product and they're married to it. They just keep thinking, if I just love it more, if I give it more foot rubs, right? If I take it out on more dates, it's going to love me more, right? Like this is going to happen. No, your product's it's actually abusing you. You're in an abusive relationship. You just don't recognize it. And you need to leave in the middle of the night, pack your stuff in a car and drive away. But people don't get that. They're caught up in it emotionally. And that's what I meant in terms of don't be emotional as the seller. Don't get caught up in the emotional aspect of your product. There's no product that I won't leave behind, right? Don't marry your products. Big component.
What are the markers for you to stop optimizing and move forward? I mean, when do you know you shouldn't scale anymore that specific product? Do you have any benchmarks or markers?
Each product has a life cycle, and it will kind of show you what its life cycle looks like. And it's typically going to be within 6 to 18 months of that product going into market. We will see a continued trend of growth organically in the marketplace. And as long as we see that continued uptick of a minimum of 20% growth year over year, then we know that product is going to stay there for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. If we start to see it trend downward below 20% after 6 to 18 months, and we see it kind of starting to, stagnate a little bit, then we know that product has its life cycle. And eventually at some point it's going to bell curve and it's going to start cycling out the other end. So we're in a constant launch process. We're in a constant iterative brand product launch continuously because we know the more branded products we put in the marketplace, the more money we're going to make. And some are going to do a lot more. Some are going to do a lot less. If they just don't perform at the top end of that level, then we'll just let them run their inventory out. And that's the end of that product. It's not that it's not selling. It's that it's just not selling at a velocity or a rate in which we accept it within the business. And so we let it fall off.
It's important stuff.
Additional products, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's important, very important stuff. And I think everything that you mentioned are very fundamental, but they are not straightforward. I mean, beginners or people that didn't scale a product and didn't already encounter these problems of seeing a product dying in front of their eyes. So these are very important inputs that they should consider.
You should consider that as a part of understanding how the model works. It's not guaranteed to happen to you that you'll have a bell curve on your product. It's not guaranteed that you'll have some sort of infinitely scaling product, right? What you can do is an iterative process that will let you go for 3, 5, 8+ years. We have products that we launched in 2012, 13, 14 that are still running today. Right? They are still running, still making sales daily, weekly, and monthly, still maintaining their performance, and they're still running. We have had others that, had a life cycle. We've had others that did really well, and we sold those brands. And we sold those brands because we knew we had other brands we wanted to grow, and so we moved after them. But at the beginner phase, at that product cycle, with our Chrome extension called Phoenix, We can go through Amazon, and literally within 90 seconds, it will tell us if any product in that category is greenlit across the board. If it's greenlit across the board, we can add it into our spreadsheet very shortly. We're going to have what's called our seeds feature, and it will add it into the seeds feature, and then you'll be able to track it. And then at that point, you have to get your cost of goods together. You got to look for a manufacturer that's going to make it. And if your manufacturer and negotiation tie together, you can go to places like Alibaba to do that. If you have that's a great starting block for products at the brand level. Of course, there's AliExpress. Everybody knows about that at the dropshipping level.
Yeah.
But you can also find AliExpress suppliers that can create brand-driven products for you too. Right? It's not all just somebody else's brand. It's more of a white label. In which obviously you get their product and they slap your logo and stuff on the box and it ships to the customer. Well, many of those will take it to the next step with you, which is actually having that product manufactured and created for you so you could actually get a brand trademark on it, right? It's kind of the next evolution of successful dropshipping product.
Exactly.
But if the numbers work, right, you can sell that product profitably. And again, 35% gross margin is what we recommend minimum.
And also $10 per unit is also important.
Minimum $10 in profit per unit. So you have a cost per acquisition number capable of sustaining paid traffic. Now, if you're going to go to AdWords and Facebook and stuff like that, there's a slightly different variable. You end up with products at the front end of your drop shipping store, like I have in the past, that were loss leaders. But my goal with that product wasn't for the first product to be profitable. It was simply to acquire the customer, Yaron, so you wouldn't buy it. Right. So that you wouldn't take my customer from me. It's so that I could acquire the customer away from someone. And where the profit came from was the email and the upsell.
Upsells, post-purchase upsells, exactly.
Absolutely. So a lot of people get stuck on that first end product profit line. And in some ways they do the same thing on Amazon, but I know that experience and on the other side, the drop shipping side as well. And they get a lot caught up in writing on that, just that first product's profitability. And I really want to encourage your listeners to think a little bit differently about what makes a 6, 7, and 8 figure business. It's all back end. It's after that customer's actually in your ecosystem, touching you and getting them to buy more from you after you've already acquired them, not acquired them 2 and 3 times.
For sure.
You acquired them 1 time, right?
And this is also something that a lot of dropshippers get wrong. They focus too much on the CPA, on the acquisition, and at the end of the day, it's not feasible just to keep on acquiring, as you mentioned.
It is feasible that if it costs you an average of X dollars, all right, let's say whatever product you're selling, it costs you an average of $10 to acquire that customer. You can scream all day long you want about how high that feels in your mind. But if you're buying your product, you're winning.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Because I get people screaming, well, I can't have $10 CPA. Why are they screaming about that? Because they only have $7 in profit in their product. So to solve that problem, right, your product has to get above $10 to $12 or $15 or more in profit per unit so that you can comfortably acquire them at $10, $15, $20, whatever the market bears. Because if they're not buying your product, they're buying someone else's. It's just that simple. And if you can get sales, you've solved a major problem. A major problem, right?
I agree, because they already opened their wallet and they apparently seem to trust you. So maybe
sell them more.
Exactly.
Right. And here's a real hint, and I'm sure you've said this before. If they buy one thing, sell them a second one of the exact same thing.
Exactly. This is the first option in the upsell sequence. Sell them more of the same.
Yeah, that's right. If you got one widget, you can get 2 more. And people laugh about the info marketing world, like, hey, it's we're going to give you a second one for $19.99, and it's like they know the psychology of that work. It does work. It really does.
I agree. And all the info marketing, if you look back on the infomercials and you really analyze them, you see these guys were geniuses. It might look funny, but they are geniuses. They know exactly what is working.
Copywriters of the day, the Gary Halberts and others, they really knew how to get into the psychology of the buyer. And some of what we've talked about today is definitely there. I hope I answered your question. I know we went around.
No, it was great. You mentioned evolving from dropshipping to building a brand. So
yes, sir.
Can you maybe elaborate about this? How, let's say I have a Shopify store or WooCommerce store, I'm doing dropshipping. I approach you guys, and what does the onboarding process look like, and how are we going to build? Are we going to build an Amazon store? What are we going to do? How is it going to look like? What should I expect in 6 months' time?
So when I have folks who come to me who are running drop shipping stores already or have started into the branding process of their drop shipping stores and have started to create brand affinity in their stores, they've gone beyond single products and maybe they started this outdoor gear store now and it's got a bunch of drop shipping products in it, but they're now starting a cycle of finding products that actually resonate with, outdoorbros.com or whatever it is, right?
It's not nasty shit as well.
Outdoor bros, yeah. I can see a whole theme coming together, bros, right? And so outdoorbros.com, let's just play with that for a second. Okay. Outdoor Bros has got products in it. It's growing, it's building. At this point, I'm still drop shipping, which is in essence another way of saying white labeling products. I'm not private labeling those products. They're already manufactured. It's putting my logo and Outdoor Bros on it, and it's shipping out to the customer, and they see a package that says Outdoor Bros. I'm like, bro, package, here's a package. So if you want to move that to the brand level, if you're going to move it to Amazon, let's start with the brand level, and let's start what might happen if you move over to the Amazon side next. Okay. Obviously, you're driving traffic through some mechanism. Influencer marketing, Pinterest ads, Facebook traffic, Google ads, native ads, all this kind of stuff, right? Display ads, right? So when you actually have that traffic rolling through, you have a huge commodity. But what most dropshippers don't know is you're going to move an average of 15 to 18% of that paid traffic over to Amazon. It's just going to happen. Your traffic will bounce off of your site and go to Amazon to find out if you're valid. All right. If your brand is valid and you have brand over there, then they're going to feel they're legitimate in your mind. If I hit the Wayback Machine for a second, it was once upon a time, if you had a business and you weren't on a brochure, at least a brochure website, you weren't a legitimate business. It was the evolution of the Yellow Pages, right? Now, fast forward, if you're an e-com business that doesn't actually have an Amazon presence, you may not be a legitimate company. So whether you think Amazon becomes the big channel for you, or it's a make all my dreams come true channel for your, current drop shipping store that's moving towards brand affinity and you want to extend it into the market, it's really what we call found money because you're already sending traffic. And here's the thing. It's not just your site that's sending 15 to 18% of its paid traffic to Amazon. It's all your competitors too.
Yeah.
So if they find you first and they've bounced off your site, then if you're there, they're going to oh, this is valid. And if your price margins are relatively competitive, they're going to buy on Amazon too. Okay. And you're going to see a percentage of those show up on Amazon, and it becomes found money for the traffic and business you're already paying for. But then there's obviously the secondary factor. So if you do get to that brand driven aspect, you've moved past white label and now you actually have them stamping your logo. You've created, on the product, you've got some re-engineered and innovation to the product. So it's no longer just tastes like chicken with all the other drop shipping products, right? You now moved into steak. Okay. So if your steak is out there and your Outdoor Bros is moving and now you're moving steaks, right? You get that brand driven affinity over to Amazon. Why? Because there's a lot you can do on Amazon's own system. Remember, it's a 7-lane highway. All right. They're selling everything to all people. That was Jeff Bezos's philosophy. And he wanted to do it all in 30 seconds or less. So you're talking about the world's almost most optimized e-com funnel ever. Right. Outside of maybe like Alibaba itself, who does like as much as Amazon's revenues they do in a year. Alibaba does it in like one day, which is insane. But they did like their last, Prime Day for Amazon didn't even top the 1 day sales for all of Alibaba. It was like Alibaba is a monster machine. Anyways, it's super split tested. So you don't have to, worry about people converting over there when you get a product in front of them. And especially if you're getting a competitive product that's innovated into a brand that you've registered with Amazon. It's called brand registry. Yeah. Okay. It's intellectual property. You have a website. It's a lot easier to brand register on Amazon. And then you need your brand trademark. This is where your intellectual property component comes together. This is what moves you from just a drop shipping store into actual brand driven affinity. And, you can then obviously leverage paid traffic inside of Amazon now that you couldn't do before. And so you have an opportunity to now create a larger revenue stream in Amazon for your brand while also continuing your Shopify store. Now, here's the kicker. This is the fun part, or the part that's a little challenging for others. I'm in the country. I live on 50 acres in the country. My family's all out here. I do a lot of countryism, so forgive me if this doesn't like Hicks from the Sticks doesn't make any sense to somebody who's listening to this. But literally, my father-in-law reminds me of this continuously. You can't ride 2 horses with 1 ass. So if you're trying to be the best dropshipping Shopify paid traffic expert in the world, and that's what you want to focus on, that's probably the horse you should be riding. If you really want to get over to Amazon and that's going to be kind of the way you want to figure this out, and that's the way you want to do it, or you're already doing it and you want to scale it more, then that's probably the horse you should be riding too. The challenge is trying to become an expert in both of those. And that's like riding two horses. Right? It's really hard to do. Maybe Jean-Claude Van Damme can do it on two semi-trucks, but I can't, right? He did a really great job of that, by the way. I can't. So I focus predominantly on Amazon FBA. I have partners whose business focused just completely on native traffic ads and Shopify. When our stores reach a certain level, when my client stores and consulting companies stores reach a certain level, we take them over there and they build up the native traffic channel for them. They are the experts in that. We take them over there to do that. It's not an expertise that we run every day in our business. It is something I have a lot of experience and have done personally, so I know enough about it to be dangerous. I've done it successfully. I know how the inner workings of it go. I just chose to play in the traffic channel that exists, which is a big traffic channel. It really is. And people think, oh, Amazon's saturated. No one wants to go sell. Well, dude, seriously, you say that, but then you go buy a bunch of products from there. So either stop buying on Amazon or get it in your mind that there are actually things people are buying over there. When you move to those higher price points, you move out of some of those negatives with Amazon. You really do. Whether they steal your products, which very rarely do they do, but when you're brand registered and you own the trademark, they definitely will not. When you set your business up to be more of a business than just a fly-by-night afternoon kind of thing, there are certain things that become much stronger. Amazon hasn't shut any of our accounts down in 8 years. We have account reps. They love us. They want to move us into new market channels. They're helping us to expand our business. And yeah, they got some quirks. Amazon is quirky. Can you get a listing taken down? Absolutely. That's part of the business model. You could have the same thing happen on Facebook. I've lost $1 million Facebook account. For sure. Right? I just lost one last month and it had nothing to do with me. It had to do with Amazon and Parler having a bitching session between each other. And Amazon's hosting services took Parler offline. Well, everybody went to Facebook and started ranting about how much they hate Amazon. Well, they saw all my ads and they started crawling all over my ads and marking them all negative until Facebook finally shut my account down. Well, right? And I'm like, put it back online. They're like, no, we can't. And I'm like, you suck. I had an account rep too. I mean, we were doing a lot. But, any of those experiences can happen in any of the networks. It's just part of the game you play, right? Yeah, I agree. Amazon has its own game. It's not it's one of the evil empires. It's not the only evil empire we play with when we do this kind of thing. So it has its pros and cons, of course, and you need to weigh those out. But, I'm going to stop because I could say some more about that, but I don't want to keep rambling if it...
No, it's cool. It's all good. And you spoke about building a business. And I agree. And I think many people overlook this. Yes. When you build a brand and you have intellectual property and you're building something with an exit strategy in mind. Correct. So some people might think that they're enjoying running the store, but more often than not, you get maybe tired of doing this stuff or you want to move on. So you have to have the exit strategy in mind. So can you share a bit about how you grasp this idea and how do you consult or coach people in regard to building the exit strategy?
So we always build from the beginning with the end in mind. Okay. And the end in mind isn't just this runs in perpetuity. It's that I've actually built an asset-driven business model because physical inventory is an asset, right? If I own that inventory, I have an asset. To an intellectual property value, which is also an asset that has intrinsic worth to somebody else. Okay. Someone who's not taking all the risk that you took to get that business started, right? So in the end, if I've built my foundation right from the very beginning, by the time I get to putting the roof on, it's not leaning to the left. And many people are not thinking about how they're building their foundations. They're building on quicksand and not rock. And then they just start to put the walls up. And by the time they make it to the second story, everything's like this. And they got walls that are leaning left and doors that won't open and the frames that won't fit. And they're like, why is this not working? So we always start with the foundation, and that is the business. We start with an LLC. We get to the registered brands and trademarks. We have a CPA and accountant firm that runs the books. So we have our accounting set up correctly from the beginning. We have all of our assets that are stored correctly. We have all of our filings that are stored correctly. And all of that becomes that foundation. Really good, strong foundation. And then we start building the walls, right? So what happens is at some point you have a very beautiful house and it's worth something to somebody else, right? You may have spent $100,000 to build that house, but they're willing to buy it for $300K. cash on the spot, right?
Yeah.
So you've got a multiple of return on that. And we always shoot for a multiple of at least 2.8 to 3.2 on the Amazon FBA side. Can it be a little higher with a dropshipping store attached or other channels like eBay or Walmart or other places of distribution, even up to retail if you want to go that far? Yes, it will increase the multiple of return you will get on the profit. Okay. When we say, through a 2.8 to 3.2 returns, it means if I have got a business running $1 million a year in revenues and it's throwing off $200,000 in profit, that's that 20% mark again, right? Then I can sell that business for up to 3x that profit, right? So I'm going to get a $600,000 check for that business. If you look at the numbers, that's basically 2 additional years of profit or 3 total I'm going to get in one check, right? And if I'm smart, I will have gone and set up the next foundation of a new business, because this is like virtual real estate, right? And I would be building another one, and then the cash from the first one would be used to accelerate the results of the second one, and then I would repeat that process. So we started doing that after 2015, and we've sold multiple businesses. We've turned over business. We sold client businesses. We have one of our businesses up for sale right now that we'll be selling in this process, and that's part of how we make our money. Okay, it's tossed. This particular one is ready to sell. It's tossing off just under 500,000 in profits per year. It's going to be just under 2 million in sales when we get it sold. We have a buyer right to the very end right now, and we're just finishing the due diligence. Right.
Cool.
That's going to be a big cash out for us. And our goal has been to push about one of those per quarter. And we're in the pipeline to do that now. It's taken us a little bit of time to do it, but it's also one of the things we kind of changed and shifted our focus in about 2 years ago was actually shifting our consulting and business and what we call our voltage business builders to the position where our clients can come in, work with us to turn their business around or grow a business into a position within 18 months or less to sell it in the marketplace. Right. And so we've actually built up a network of sellers who are looking to buy these companies from us. Nice. We are even in negotiations with investment groups to have those additional businesses. We've done this before on a one-off basis, but we've realized this is a great way for us to build for our business and our customers, is to have the investors buy them at 100% cash, and then our company runs the infrastructure for that company. And that investor gets a passive cash out. They don't do anything, right?
Cool.
Except get once a month status updates. How the business is going, and here's our profit increase, and here's where we're headed, right? And they absolutely love that from an investment group, because instead of investing in real estate, they're investing in virtual real estate. Instead of putting their money into Wall Street and stuff, they're kind of like, yeah, not really cool with that right now. Like let's put our money somewhere else. So they're really wanting to buy these e-com businesses. And so if you're at the position of growing or building, or even at the point where you're thinking maybe my business is for sale, this is a great year for it. So 2018, we saw about 2.5x the return on profits. We saw it grow to about 2.8 to 3 in 2019. After 2020, we're seeing upwards of 3.2 to 3.7. So projections are showing as well as up to 4x just for the Amazon FBA component. So if you bring in the Shopify or other traffic channels and you have a good history, minimum of 12 months with that store, and you have the Amazon channel, it's 6 to 8x multiple on those e-com stores. They're worth a lot of money, folks. And so really think about that, because that is building with the end in mind. It's a legacy and an asset too. Let's say you don't want to sell it, because people are like, do I have to sell it? No, you don't have to sell it, right? But if you want to keep building it and growing it, let's say you've got family. I have 3 business builders right now who've brought their sons in and their daughters to work the business with them. Nice. And they're learning to build this up as a legacy and as an asset, right? That they're going to hand off to their children, and we're helping to train them. And we got 14, 15, and 18-year-olds in here learning how to do that with their parents, so that they have a legacy, something they can turn over to them, a business that they can turn over that's, not just in the ways that a lot of businesses faced troubles last year, and a lot of retails are shutting down or having a lot of trouble last year. The ones in the largest, fastest growing market last year was e-commerce. It went up 60% across the board. It was the one industry that went exponential growth last year. And that is actually not slowing down. It's not slowing down this quarter. I don't foresee it slowing down in the next quarter, even with things opening up to a degree and not as much trouble as last year happening. We're still seeing that many people adopted things last year they weren't willing to ever do in the past. And now that they've got used to Amazon showing up every 2 days, and in the getting their way. We call it subscribe and spend in our house. It's not subscribe and save. For the amount of product we push through our house, it's more like subscribe and spend. That they're actually getting accustomed to that, and they're actually getting used to having those products show up all the time. And that's seeing a lot of growth this year. So to wrap that all up in a pretty bow, we call that the platinum principle. It's similar to the golden parachute that CEOs get when they eject out of the business they created. You can basically do the same. We call it the platinum principle. As really the end in mind.
Yeah, great. So, it's so important. And you mentioned selling and starting to reinvest in a new operation. This is basically, I think, the best and fastest way to accumulate wealth, because
it really is a virtual real estate acquisition of wealth. And in the United States, at least, the number one amount of millionaires that are made every year are made in real estate. And virtual real estate is just a component. It just happens to be digital. And once you put domains and IP and intellectual properties and stuff, you've claimed that land, quote unquote, the same way that you would get a piece of property when you purchase it and assess it and put your deed on it, right? It's the same kind of situation. So yes, real estate and the virtual world can be made and built and done. And this is an application of real estate put into the virtual real estate world. And even down to the management of the multi-tenant Amazon companies that my company becomes the real estate management company of. Cool. And that concept works really well for alternative wealth investors.
And you started speaking about the trends that you're seeing, and obviously you guys see a lot of different Amazon stores and helping a lot of clients. So can you share a bit of like the trends that you're seeing? Okay, you mentioned the subscribe and spend, but what else?
Subscribe and spend, man, that's a big one. Literally, women 27 to 40 are the largest buying demographic on Amazon. They make up 80% of their profits. Just take that one away for a second. That's a big golden nugget there if you're paying attention. So trends wise, it's definitely become cool to shop online. We all know that now. But the infrastructure and architecture, the whole foundation of digital, mobile, clicking and buying and purchasing has really elevated in the last 5 to 10 years. And it sounds weird to say that because we've been online since 99. But some really finally data-driven semantic artificial intelligence and learning machines have kind of kicked in. Now that the data's gotten strong enough that you're seeing the increase of multiples on purchasing and valuations because the systems are getting just so much better at putting the right products in front of the right people at the right time. And really getting that sub 30-second purchase initiative done with people. And that's a lot of emotional buying, right? Well, so you see that trend continuing forward. You see the adoption of mobile purchasing. Most of the purchases of those women 27 to 40 are done on their mobile phones, believe it or not even on laptops or desktops. My wife is a classic case study of this. All of her purchasing comes across Amazon's mobile app, right? And it's all click, click, click. And I'm like, honey, we got to slow down on the click, 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 lady. But it's a big trend that's growing even farther. There's a bigger adoption in the older generations as of last year who couldn't go to the locations. And so they had to get on their computers and desktops, et cetera. They're not as mobile driven, but they are definitely now into the desktop driven purchasing. And a lot of them are on Amazon and on e-com stores and purchasing online now where they weren't purchasing online before. That trend is going to continue. In fact, Forrester Research, US Bank, et cetera, there's a recent study put out there. You can Google this real quick for Forrester and e-com predictions. It said about 21.6 trillion in new online assets will be online by 2030. Wow. So retail is making its major shift. And we are literally just turning this Titanic. There's a lot of us in the little rowboats and the dinghies that are out there pushing the front end of the Titanic, but it's just starting to turn. So there, by any means, you have not missed the opportunity that is e-com at all. In fact, this ship is just turning. And in the next 10, 20 years, we're going to see it turn to the point where literally it is now an inverted relationship. 35% of online sales, 65% of offline sales or local retail is actually going to invert. And they said that could happen as far out as 2040, as early as 2030. You're going to see that inverse relationship flip over, meaning that you're going to now see the majority of people purchasing online and the minority of people purchasing locally, which that's a whole nother social economic conversation to have beyond e-com. That's a different podcast. But trending for sure, trending in growth this year, trending in adoption, trending in continued retail stores moving online. We see a lot of that in clients who are calling us up and saying, I did offline. I did Shopify. I did other paid stuff. I did, local retail businesses, and I've got physical products and stuff. And I really want to get them onto Amazon. How do I do that? And how do I do it really fast? Right. And they're like, we'll pay you, get us in, let's do this. We got to move quickly. Why? Because the faster, obviously, you get to that realized revenue, the faster you get your products launched, the quicker you're going to make money. I had a guy come in the other day and do exactly that. Right. He came in and he said, I want to get my products online. I want to, get this out the next door. And he ran into a little bit of COVID supply and logistics issues because you guys have probably experienced this in your stores. AliExpress, it's like, hey, I got a banner that says my product's not show up in 2 weeks. Right? We had to play some games with the logistics. Well, it's everybody. It's everybody, right? We had to have that same effect on our end with logistics. And one of the reasons why we are still selling as one of the top sellers is that we had a lot of extra inventory. And we have really, my partner Reed is my marriage partner for 8 years. He's very good at logistics and supply chain. He had already had enough product that we've withstood others who went offline. And that's the other big thing I see trending this year is that a lot of companies in the online space who were selling physical products at the end of the fourth quarter of 2020 are no longer in business because they could not sustain the inventory growth of that fourth quarter, which was huge, right? And they're not coming back. So what we're seeing trend-wise, the last third thing of this trend is that a lot of new holes have opened in the online e-com space for those who are in it right now to take advantage of things that were 2, 3, 4 years ago so saturated you wouldn't touch them. And now all of a sudden there's holes. There's gaping holes in there to go in and exploit that very quickly. And so he came in and he's exploited one of those holes. We helped him work through that with our business builders. We helped show him where to go and where to dig in his mountain. And here's the gold vein you need to go after. Don't go panning down this river way over here looking for freckles. Come over here to the gold mine and get the nuggets, right? And we showed him where to grab those nuggets. He built a brand. And at month 6, he launched his entire brand. And he went to over 100,000 in monthly recurring revenue in 45 days. Yep. So once you see that gold, once you know where to go, I tell people, this is where we go. This is what we avoid. Here's the brand idea and concept. Here's your demographic. We walk them through exactly where they should go, right? And where they should end up. It's very important because there's so much time and money that can be wasted just throwing stuff against the wall. And I would advise you folks not to just throw stuff against the wall. Take a little bit of time to do that market research and product research because the trends this year are showing there's a lot of good opportunities that 2, 3 years, 4 years ago, you wouldn't touch. You wouldn't touch them at all. Too many Facebook ads, too much Amazon traffic, too much everything, right? They're definitely opening some fantastic opportunities for those who are playing in the e-com game this year. No doubt about it.
Interesting stuff. And what about on a micro level? I mean, what do you see the differences? Sellers that are doing well in opposing to sellers that are not doing well. Is it inventory? Is it copywriting? What are the trends in regards to micro level?
Definitely inventory and logistics. Those who are able to negotiate, handle, and manage that component stronger with more detail are having more success because they're obviously not stocking out, which is an issue on both fronts. It's an issue with Amazon if you stock out because they start to hurt your rankings and your organic traffic. The longer you're out of stock, the worse it gets. It makes it very hard to start selling again after a stock out. Facebook traffic and Amazon traffic and anything you're running paid, even AdWords and stuff, having to pause those campaigns because you ran out of try is bad, right? It's very bad. They hardly ever restart the same way they were once you got them, data going and running. You definitely don't want to pause those ads. And so stock outs are really bad. So it's very important to understand your logistics and planning, having risk management, we call it, in the business world, which is I have 2 or 3 other suppliers that could immediately fail over for my products. It's very important you have that from a risk perspective. So logistics, shipping, and management is a big component of running the business today. And COVID, the whole thing, you got to just be very strong about where you do that. And you don't have to always go to China. This is where I hear everybody default to, and it's like China. I'm like, I have nothing against China except for the fact that they've kind of cornered the market on the emotional aspect. But you can get stuff in Taiwan, you can get stuff in India, you can get stuff in Malaysia that you can get just as well in China. And then you have multiple other places to export it from. We see somebody asked me the other day, well, what about that 25% tariff from China? I'm like, I didn't get affected by it because most of my products don't come from China. So I've avoided some of those problems, right? You can avoid them too by creating additional manufacturing opportunities for your supply chain and other locations. Get outside of just China. You may not even realize or had due diligence done to know you could get it in Canada or Mexico, maybe if you did that time, right? It might cost you a little bit more to get that cost per goods, but you should charge an inverse relationship, higher retail to make up for it. You should get a higher perception of value, right? So the other component is obviously conversions and stuff on Facebook and conversions through your Shopify stores in that way, or your traffic channels to your Shopify stores. Is obviously a very different ball of wax than conversions and traffic on Amazon. So in my experience with Shopify, if you're maintaining 2 to 3% conversion rates after the cart checkout, you're doing very well. And if you can continue to, correct me if I'm wrong, you see the same thing. It's my experience. If you are getting those purchases, purchase more. Get smarter at what you sell them next. Don't stop the purchases just because you don't like the acquisition cost. Okay. With Amazon, we have the same problem. In Amazon, we have what's called a unit session percentage. It's known as the conversion rate. They call it unit session percentage. It is a metric of per 1,000 users, how many did I convert? Okay. So on Amazon, it's very different. If I have a sub 20% conversion rate, I'm doing bad. If I have a 30% conversion rate, I'm now up worthy of the first page, and I might reach what's called Amazon's choice, but I'm not going to get into the bestseller badge. Okay? If I'm able to get above 30 to 50% conversion rates, and that sounds really redonkulous, but it actually is true, then you are now capable of not only staying on the first page organically, that means no paid traffic, or very little paid traffic, okay? You are now capable of maintaining the Amazon choice or even bestseller badge for your product in the category in which you're selling that product. At which point it's not impossible and totally possible to run not from just 10 to 100 sales a day, but from 100 to 1,000 sales a day in certain categories. I have friends that are doing 4,000 or 5,000 sales a day in certain categories, right? So it's there. It's absolutely there. And you're talking about 30 to 50% conversion rates. We average around 35 to 37% conversion rates on every one of our Amazon listings. And that is really because they are a super split tested funnel. We have paid traffic, Amazon's paid traffic in there to help manage that. But again, we're not fighting over pennies, right? We're what I call stepping over dollars to pick up pennies because we're not fighting every profit level. Here's the last little nugget to answer your question. Stop in this one.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So if you and I are competing in the market and you're selling fuzzy bunny slippers to grandma, and so am I, okay? And I see you're in there. You got 300 reviews. I'm thinking, it's a little bit of a competition or whatever. You're selling yours for $19.99. I'm thinking, okay, how do I beat the crap out of you? $19.99 means you're probably getting about $7 in profit if you're doing a great job, okay? So I come in and I say, all right, he's selling fuzzy bunny slippers. All right, so back to the hot dog cookie analogy, okay? We should go back to that one instead of the fuzzy bunny slipper. So you're selling hot dogs, I'm selling hot dogs and cookies. So I come in with hot dogs and cookies and I'm selling mine for $29.99. Now it sounds ridiculous. Slippers actually makes more sense at that price point. If you're managing to sell hot dogs and cookies for $29.99, you are a freaking genius. You're a bloody freaking genius. So I come in and what's happening at this point, my profit is probably $14 to $20. So for every customer you might try to buy for $5 or $7 or less in order to make up your profit on the paid side of Amazon, I'm going to go in and say, I'm willing to spend $10 to $12 to acquire that same customer. And I'm going to start buying up all your traffic on Amazon. And the customers that would have come to buy you, they're going to be like, ooh, hot dogs and cookies instead. They're going to come over and pay a higher price point. And I'm going to basically in time, I'm going to buy up all your market share. You're going to be racing to your prices, doing giveaways, which is crazy. You don't want to do a lot of giveaway for products. We'll talk about that. You don't want to mess around with fake reviews or any nonsense like that. We can go to launch on products and get an average of 10 sales or more a day with no reviews when we launch our products. So the point again is customer acquisition of market share. And I have more profit than you. Eventually you will succumb to me. And if you are one of 3 or 4 other sellers selling hot dogs who are trying to make them look pretty, but I'm coming in with my little bit of an innovation on hot dogs and cookies, then you guys won't catch up with me. I will eat your lunch and then the next person's lunch, and then I'll be the bully. Right? I'm going to come in and eat all your lunch. And in 3, 4, 5, 6 months, you're all going to be trying to lower your prices and go to the bottom. I'm actually going to be raising my prices because now my PPC costs are running that bell curve. They're starting to come down as my organic market share starts to come up. And that's the beauty I love of Amazon. It is a semantic search engine that has organic ranking, kind of like Google does, only they're buying products. But I can use PPC to manipulate those results. I can use PPC on Amazon to rank my product higher in Amazon's keyword searches. I can't do that on Google. And that's one of the things I love and why I've stayed in this game so long is that I can come in and beat all the other hot dog people once I get in that market with my hot dogs and cookies, and I'll stay there for years, and I'll be the most profitable one sucking up all the traffic.
This is more important, the concept of not racing to the bottom and
not racing to the bottom.
Not playing with pennies, playing with the dollars and being able to spend more.
Those pennies to step over the dollars. I see people doing it all. Ooh, look, a shiny penny. And it's like, well, you just missed the dollar. Like, how did you, like, what are you doing? Like, you're confused. We want to, step over the pennies and pick up the dollars. And so we don't want to fight those last little price points and things. And we don't want to do crazy giveaways and stuff. We do rebates at certain components of our product launches, but then we don't do them again. So we create a higher valuation of the customer. We buy up the market share. We don't need to manipulate the market. We're controlling the market. We're driving the value perception. I'm not Tesla competing with a Hyundai.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? I'm not going to go lower my Tesla to compete with Hyundai.
Yeah.
So if you change the way you think about that brand, you change the way you think about that brand-driven affinity, and you get out of your scarcity mindset that says, well, no one wants to spend more than $20 on Amazon for a product. It's not true. Okay? Then you get to an abundance mindset.
Yeah.
And you realize there are millions of products left in the marketplace. Amazon's a great resource, by the way, to data mine products with like that Phoenix Chrome extension I was talking about from sixleaf.com. You can go there. Is this literally pulling data in that can even help you find dropshipping products by comparing them against known data in Amazon. Okay. Because you go to AliExpress, for example, and you have no idea. You have an idea that they're selling so many units or they've been in market this long, but at the end of the day, you don't really have a good estimate of sales for anybody that's buying that product in the marketplaces where they're actually being acquired, not on AliExpress. So with Amazon, I go to the end consumer market. I see the data of that seller's estimates of sales to the actual consumer. That's extremely valuable.
Agree. Interesting. Very interesting stuff. I want to start wrapping things up. Where can people hear more about you? If you upload content online, blog, contact you guys?
Absolutely. Well, I have a very short last name, as you probably have seen. So if you happen to Google me, Neil Twa, then you will find my Facebook and LinkedIn. You can catch me there. If you want to go to a specific website to learn more about my business, you can go to asin360.com, ASIN360.com. And I got a 19-minute video that kind of walks you through what we do. Check it out, right? At that point, you can have a live chat with me and we can talk about what we're doing. We have a couple of different programs. I don't know if you want me to bring that up at all on here or talk about that.
Go ahead. Yeah, for sure.
We have ASIN 360 Pro, which is kind of taking existing businesses, either maybe in Shopify who want to get on Amazon, or Amazon businesses that are maybe struggling. They married their product. They had problems with their product research. They're like, I didn't quite get all the details about how this thing should actually work, but I'm also invested in it and I really want to see it go. That's where I get quite a few people in our ASIN 360 Pro program, 90 days, and it's really geared as a consultative turnaround. It's not really gained as a course or program because that's what they got going on, most likely. That's how they got started. This is more of live chat, weekly live calls, 12 weeks of intensive to help you turn around your business, really get your Amazon business moving very quickly in 90 days. I do consult at what we call our Voltage Business Builders, where we actually have private coaching for those who might want to, you might have more money or doing other things. Time is a big scarcity for you. And you're like, well, I can spend maybe 10 to 15 hours a week, but that's about the max. Well, our business builders kind of fit that model. They might already be selling successfully. Most of mine are doing over 500 to $1 million a year in sales already, sometimes up to 5 or 8 million. And they're wanting to do more systematic optimizations and growth. They're looking for multi-7-figure, 8-figure types of businesses. And Voltage Business Builders goes with 12 months of private coaching to really help them turn that around. It comes with a pay-as-you-profit bonus. So it has what we call a skin in the game kind of aspect for those 12.
Great.
And that's really performance-driven aspect to help them. So we also do the management consulting side on that. And then we obviously sell and merge. So we help companies position their businesses for sale. If they make good options for our investment groups, they might even get purchased from our investment groups for management, or we take them to our relationships where we can sell those businesses and help them really negotiate the sale process of ensuring that business sells correctly. So those are kind of the things we're working on. And we have a done for you service, which is a component of Voltage, where we have general managers that were trained by us. They're running 6-figure businesses right now. They know our processes, know exactly how to build, maintain, and grow these on scale. We have a managed services division that actually handles the management. So if it's time for you to like let up some of this deal, or you want to grow faster without having, and you maybe want to go hit the golf course for a while, our managed services team takes over that aspect of growth, performance growth, and full account management for a flat fee plus a percentage of profit. So there's an incentive to grow.
Cool.
We have two different ways we structure that for profit or growth, or from incentivize our general managers to grow those, which is fantastic. They love the incentive. For example, I had a guy last year in one of our clients. He had a brand new product idea that he found inside of the niche that this gentleman was already running on. And he said, he brought them the paperwork and said, I'll negotiate the deal. I got the cost of goods. Here's what it's going to cost to go. Do you want to do it? And the business owner said, yeah, let's do that. And so the general manager launched the whole product, launched the whole thing, moved it all to market, whatever, added on $1 million in revenue in 1 year, which is that one product. So the client was extremely happy, and he didn't do anything except just say, I approve, launch the product. That's our managed services. So that's kind of the breadth of things that we work on over here.
Awesome. Sounds great. And I love the fact that you guys put the skin in the game, because it makes everything more logical
from the business. And it makes a big sense for them. Absolutely. Because there's a performance component. We hit a certain growth goal at the net profit level. And then there's a bonus that kicks in, but not until we hit that. Cool. So it's usually within 12 months or less that we achieve that goal with our clients. And they love that because they know we're working together on a goal that will be a win for both of us. Right.
Yeah. And this is the only way to go in business, to be honest. Win-win
I think if you know what you're doing and you're very strong at it, then you have no problem doing that.
Yeah.
If I need to get everything from you up front, then you probably are a little cautious about what's in it for me. Right. And at the end of it, what's in it for me is getting businesses to the point of selling them, because outside of making money, the businesses are running, as I mentioned earlier, they're worth a lot more when we sell them.
Yeah.
And selling them is really what I'm at. And that's where I get involved in most of these businesses, is because they know they want to get to the sell point and they want us to help them get there. And it's a win-win in the end when they do.
Cool. Thank you very much. I'd love to have another talk about selling businesses and business brokerage, but
absolutely.
For a different talk. This is for a different topic, different talk. Thank you so much for sharing the valuable knowledge, and it was great fun and funny, and I love the stories and a lot of takeaways. I love the what your father said about throwing shit on the wall.
That's the one. I thought you were going to go after two horses. That was a good one too.
Sorry, I didn't mean to offend you, but
no. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm actually a really good guy, I swear.
This sticked. What can I do?
That'll stick with everybody, I guess, right?
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. Take care.
All right, my friend. Thank you for your time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.